Hey, it's X here, coming back with the worst show on the internet, also known as the Hex Plays Show, which I have just instated for some reason, and I'm coming at you with WarThunder. And today we're reviewing a premium tank by the name of the T126, which is a Tier 1 Soviet premium light tank. And it has actually been getting a lot of hype for how good of a CO clubber it is. Now, this will be a review to tell you if it's worth spending your hard-earned money on, and from all my experiences with it, I'd say it's an iffy thing. It depends a lot on the matchmaking it's going to get. But let's start off with the armor, since I'm already in the effective armor viewer. You basically get, unangled, you get a 78.9 average, or an 80mm average on the frontal plate, which is really good. And that's actually in addition to the lower plate, which actually has more armor, believe it or not. It's just at a better slope. So people trying to aim there by instinct will have a very bad time. You also get these little things, which are actually, I think, points in the armor that are actually stronger. These aren't weak spots, really. They are not. So people trying to aim for these will be getting a very harsh surprise. The turret is really weak, though. If you're getting shot in the turret, you're probably going to be penetrated, which is a real drawback to this tank, especially considering it has such good frontal hull armor. You expect the turret to be better, when in fact it's very subpar. Okay, you'll be penetrated through the turret a very large number of times, from the side, from the rear especially, and from the front. It's basically the same thickness all over, and it's bad. I mean, this is one of the worst parts of the tank, the turret. But moving on from that, hitting here is basically an auto bounce at its tier. It's not going through. But if you angle it this way, it actually creates a sort of weak point. But even so, you'll have a lot more armor, and I think it's worth angling this tank. Just like many other tanks in the game, it has very sturdy armor when doing this, but even so, the turret will still be penetrated. So going up against this tank, you want to aim for the turret, because it is a very weak spot, and I cannot stress that enough. The side armor is actually quite good, in addition to the rear armor, which is sloped. This portion, not so much. Neither is this portion, since it's unangled, but even so, this tank will be bouncing a lot of shots for its tier, and I think it has very sturdy armor. Let's look at the gun, which is 45mm and has a standard penetration of 62mm. Now, this at range is absolutely pathetic, and you'll have a very hard time knocking out enemy vehicles in this tank, which is really is a drawback, especially considering it sometimes meets tanks of a higher tier. And this thing basically, it's incredibly inept at penetrating enemy tanks. Actually, not penetrating them, but doing actual damage to them. Sure, you'll get through with 103mm, but actually hurting them that's another story with APCR. With high explosive, however, you'll be doing plenty of damage, but not penetrating. So, you know, you have a sort of dilemma here, and I think the gun is one of the biggest drawbacks of this tank. Moving on from that, though, you also get a machine gun. I'm just going to put that down there. You get a machine gun. That's nice. Moving on. Let's check out what we got here. It's worth a lot of eagles, and you get a generous amount of bonuses for driving a premium vehicle, obviously, but the biggest thing I do not like that much about this tank is the fact it has a battle rating of 2.7, which is the same as this tank. Actually, not the same. They must have changed in the newest update to 3.0, which actually is quite good, which means this will be getting better matchmaking. So this might be the best time possible to buy this tank. The T-34 is a fantastic little tank. I suggest you buy it. It can obliterate everything, but we're not talking about the T-34 here. We're talking about the T126. Is it worth your money? Now, a lot of people might show you raw gameplay footage, but I'm here to analyze it in further detail. And from what I've experienced of this tank, it is a very sturdy one, and I think it may be worth your money if you use it correctly and you get really lucky with the matchmaker. Let's go into some gameplay, and I'll show you what I mean. So during this point, I'm basically going to talk about the basic stats of the tank. First of all, the speed is actually quite nice. As you can see, it can cover ground. Let me slow it down to 1. It's actually as fast as an M3 Stuart, despite having all this sloped armor, which is quite nice. Getting around the battlefield at a quick rate can be very helpful, depending on which situation you need to adapt to, and that is something very nice about this tank. What isn't nice about the tank is the fact that, well, the gun. I'll talk about the gun a little bit later. Now, in this review, I'm going to be showcasing a bunch of moments that show off why the tank, the different characteristics of the tank, and I think this one shows it. The gun against light armor targets is quite effective, but against ones with some heavy armor, you're going to need to use some APCR. I knocked this guy out in one hit with AP-HE, but he is very low on armor, and from the side, I bounced the first shot on this guy, and I load some APCR, and I bounce another shot. Only then I load APCR, and I finally take him out. However, I do not see the martyr, and, well, that happens. But, now about the gun. Now this replay in particular will show you the strengths and weaknesses of the gun, as well as a bit of the armor. Now, while the armor is rather good, it's something that you can't really rely upon against high penetration vehicles. High penetration rounds will go through this tank and blow it up with ease. It can't take hits very well if they go through the armor. So let me fast forward to where I put the gun to work, because I want to make this a rather quick review that details the strengths and weaknesses of the tank. So I spark up here, and start getting some side shots on some of these tanks going through. I hit an M2A4, and I think I actually take him out. M2A4s go down quite easily, though, because they are a stock tank. He either gets away or I do knock him out. I think I knock him out, though. And with one more shot, I land on Mark, and he's down. I come up over this hill, and I see an M8A1. Now, these things have really punchy guns, and so I want to get out of there as quick as possible upon realizing his turret is facing me, and so I pull back really quickly so that he is distracted by another one of my tanks. Pull up, take a few more shots, but that's not the important part of this replay. That comes a little bit later. In fact, the thing that comes a bit later is how hilarious one of the things that happens in it are, and I'll show you that in just a bit. Now, if there's one thing I can say that is good about the gun, it's that it's very good against tanks with very low armor. But anything with high armor, well, you're going to find out. Let me fast forward here. So I've actually been pinned down by an M3 here. I actually managed to take out another Stewart, who I actually mistake as an M3 Lee, but I managed to take him out. Artillery is going off around me in all directions, blah blah blah, you get the point. More shots. This guy's actually firing on me, but surprisingly enough, my turret holds up, despite it having such bad armor. Because a lot of the shots are hitting this little portion here. The portion right here contains spaced armor, which is good for trapping shots. And so right about here, I decide to go into the planes, which have actually been buffed. Now, the way they've been buffed is that when you go into a plane, you have more time to work now, as opposed to, it was more frantic before, but now you have enough time for a little more wiggle room, and so I go into this plane here. I'll show you what happens. Basically, I take out one tank, damage another, and then get obliterated by running into one too many trees. Yes, you heard right. Fire a couple rockets, one takes out the M3 Lee with ease. Fire a couple more, that one I think grazes him. I actually ran into a tree there, and my hull has been compromised, but I don't care. Now I do. Rest in peace, sweet prince. So I'm driving up more. But here's another thing I would actually like to showcase. This thing is actually surprisingly good against aircraft for its tier. This HE-111 here, I actually start firing off some shots into. And I think my main gun actually hits him one or two times. Let me fast forward to where it happens. I'm actually hitting with this machine gun. It's actually quite effective, but right here, my main gun just hit him. I think my main gun just hit him. Either that or it was that time, but I think it went right through the wing. But either way, I hit him, and he's falling. Mayday, we have a fighter down. RIP, press F to pay respects. Goodbye, sweet prince. So I come up over this ridge, and I see an M3 Lee. And I immediately know it would be a very stupid idea to head in front of its 75mm Doom cannon. And so, like any rational, sane person without, I don't know, some kind of mental disease, I go around him, put a shot into him immediately, and hope to disable this little turret here. Without this turret, he'll be completely unable to stop me. He gets a shot in, but it actually ricochets off my roof, allowing me to put the shot in, which actually disables the turret. And I think that's what allowed me to continuously put shots into him. Now, why am I complaining so much about the gun? Well, each one of these shots is penetrating. Everyone is, and so I switched to APCR. I thought it wasn't penetrating, and so I switched to APCR, but even so, I'm not doing anything. And I continue just putting shot after shot into this guy to no avail. I mean, over and over again. Oh my, yeah. You haven't seen anything yet. This is like halfway through. I'm pretty sure each one of these is penetrating, and I'm aiming for different parts of his tank and wildly trying to score some kind of damaging blow on this M3 Lee to no avail. It's going through. I've knocked out his I've knocked out his transmission. Now he can't turn, and he doesn't have a repair kit. I keep piling shots into him, in different parts of his vehicle, even sometimes hitting the same place twice, but to no avail. I keep firing and firing. It does nothing. I mean, it's going through, but it's not doing anything. This gun just doesn't have the kind of stopping power needed for a tank with high armor. Let me fast forward because I actually start putting HE rounds into his track to make sure he won't be able to repair. And that doesn't actually work out too well. And I have no idea why he hasn't actually abandoned his tank by now, but yeah, I put like 25 shots into his track about. Until I finally go up from around him. And with one high explosive round, I'm able to take him out from the rear. I mean from the side. That was with a high explosive round. So yeah, that says something. So now I start getting some shots on an M2A4. Nothing particular. The thing I wanted to show you was just how, oh my gosh, how many shots did it take to knock out that M3? I mean, wow. But then I see in a Stug 3A, and I put on my best rape face and move in for the kill. And he's getting bombarded by artillery, and I think, ooh, easy kill, and start putting shots into the side, but I'm bouncing. Oh no. That is not good. But thankfully he gives me the side armor, and I've actually been hit. My engine's damaged, my gunner wounded, but I've actually managed to set him on fire, which was crucial. His friends are firing on me, but I'm hoping he actually takes a shot here so that he won't be able to penetrate my armor from this angle, but thankfully I have my road wheel stopping him here, and I think his gun was damaged. And so I pull up from behind him. First shot bounces, bad angle. Put in a second shot. He's dead. Rest in peace. Rip. He's down. The rest of the replay basically plays out. I switched to another person here by accident, but it doesn't really matter, since the rest of the game plays out rather standardly. Let me find myself again. I go up to the T50, fire on the T50, bounce the T50, because the T50 is completely overpowered. And its armor is invincible, made of pure stellinium. Strongest armor in world. But I make it to the end of the game and survive, even with these kind of tanks going up against me. And so that says something about the resilience of the T126 at times. It can be a very useful tank to use, especially for a beginner player. And so with that in mind, let me get to my conclusion. And so to give a conclusion of my thoughts on this tank after that last replay, I've taken a number of factors into consideration, and I am prepared to give it what I call a letter grade. Now, it's from an F to an A+ scale on the letter grade, and so basically I take into account a lot of factors, including armor, speed, battle rating, and a bunch of different factors, and the rating at the end of the video will determine how, what it's worth for its price, for everything considered. And so, in conclusion, I'm going to summarize it. Overall, if you like a tank that can bounce a lot of shots and that you can oftentimes rely on its armor against weaker opponents, the T126 is for you. But if you want a good gun to come with it, I'm afraid you're out of luck. The gun, it really is lackluster, and the turret is a big weak spot. It has its downsides, but at the same time, it has a lot of upsides as well. Overall, you'll be relying on the sturdy armor, maneuverability, and quick reflexes to make this thing work, because the gun really does suck. Overall, I'm prepared to give this tank a letter grade of a B- out of an A. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next tank review. Peace.